based on carrots and sticks, pleasure and punishment. And those are effective, but they're very limited. So therefore, this session is all about how to create sustainable human change. And one thing that I will introduce in the very beginning is this. Are you familiar with the Rubik's Cube? Do you know how to solve it? When I was a small boy, I had this in my hands, and I recently looked up. The history is that it was invented at the same year when I was born. So when I was 6 years old, it became very popular. And it was on my desk. Every day I could come and try to solve it. I never was successful, not a chance. Recently, in the last few years, I bought this one for my kids. Surprise, surprise. I'm now able to solve it in 3 minutes. And now is the question, what's the difference between me some decades ago and today? The answer is very simple. There's an algorithm.
I thought you were going to say Google or YouTube.
Google, yeah, they have the evidence of the algorithm. But essentially in here is an algorithm that I was not aware of. Where I got it, it was just already unpackaged and just through the hands of the second hands and so forth. So there was no instruction for me. Now, because there is an instruction, the same way human change works, every single person has internal change algorithm. By definition, it's quite similar because we have evolved through the same genetic material. We have the DNA, and that's why we are speaking about the transformation gene. We wouldn't be here if our genome wouldn't be experiencing the transformations and changes constantly on daily basis and on a historical and thousands of years. That's why genetically we have the information of what the change means, and we have the power to access it. It's just a question. It's just a question with our conscious mind. Do we want to? Do we want to uncover that transformation power that's already inbuilt into our DNA? And the last thing before I share my slides will be why I'm so confident about this genetic perspective. Because the last, let's say it was proposed already 50 years ago, but in the last 20 years, there is a domain which is called epigenetics. And those who are familiar with that, they know that it's not about the DNA sequence, only about that, but it's about experiences in life and the surrounding environment and choices determine our life outcomes, not purely the DNA. And I think there will be more revelations from that area as well. And then I thought, oh, that perfectly comes together. If we make the choice that we cannot do something, of course we cannot do it. And if we make the choice we can do something, then we are able to do that. At this moment, I will give you a quick intro, more visual, to support what I just was introducing as the power that lies within every human being, and then some tools to help yourself as an individual or help companies to achieve whichever company goals you would like to achieve. So I assume you see my slides right now. Right, so this is a transformation design framework, and most demanded over the last few months, obviously, is the leadership masterclass, how you can lead the change, how you can master the change in your organizations. 8 integral components of transformation. And this is nice diagram, and then people sometimes are puzzled where to start. It kind of looks like it doesn't have the numbers attached to it, and it's obviously because it's all integral. But I would like to start usually with a very core essential starting point, which is, if we look and imagine this as a clock, that's between, let's say, around 10:30 on the clock to the noon or to the midnight, which is energetic intelligence, human energetic intelligence. The key essence there is we are not accumulators. We can look at how we eat food. We cannot accumulate food. Of course, there is some side effects we can get fat, but still there is a limit to that. And the same happens with the energies. We are not able to accumulate energy by drinking more coffee. We can only uncover our energy conversion algorithms and then access the energies around us, whether the energy in the form of money, energy in a form of human capital, energy in a form of natural resources. That's the starting point. The next one is transformation gene. I already introduced that. So the genetic or the very fundamental understanding, the change is possible, the change is happening, everything is a change. Life is a change. Look at your pictures a few years ago or a few decades ago. Your thoughts 10, 20 years ago were different. Everything changes all the time. COVID is just a great reminder about that. It was just outside circumstance that is reminding, now we need to activate our genes and change, not only personally, but also organizationally. The next is typology of change, which I'll introduce in a separate slide later. Vectoral transformation, I will introduce in a separate slide later. And then it kind of turns into more sophisticated area, which is called artificial intelligence and neuroscience. It's still quite underdeveloped from my perspective, and there's more things to do to understand how our brains work, the neural networks, and how we can actually make the interfaces between the computer and brain. But that's very essential for the transformation, because if we have better understanding how the neural networks keep the record of our patterns, of our behaviors, and we can stimulate those to rewire, then we are making much more greater progress in influencing what people think and do. Social influence is currently the most powerful source of change. I'll explain it later on in examples. And technology is the amplifier, meaning that by its nature, it's neutral. It's just how we put into the practice, and amplification happens just by the fact that it's fully available, much more capable of certain tasks. And the last one is experience design, how we really then the amplified effect of technology are matching with the user expectations and user experience. So those are the integral components. And of course, in the short video, we will not cover all of that. But now I will give you a few examples how that was done. So this one is about 14 companies, 240 employees from these companies. What did they do? They were commuting to work. That's what people did before COVID, most of us. And the question was more into the intersection of sustainable mobility in a city. The cities were Boston and Cambridge and the neighboring in the Massachusetts, the United States. Because I was doing my postdoc at Massachusetts Institute of Technology, that was one of our research studies. And we were looking how people are using bikes. And not only those who were participating were able to observe that, but we were asking the companies to put it on big screens in their offices. You see in the background the pictures. And there were people not only participating, but everyone were aware where the company stands depending on their bike ridership by their employees. So leveraging the social influence, how others constantly influence what individuals think and choose based on behaviors and social context around them. And that was a great results of 20% of engagement as the 6 weeks the study was on, and all of these participants were reporting how they commute, and the engagement got up to this mark of 26%. The other one was about people using this kiosk called Higi. There are like 10,000 kiosks across the United States, and these allow you to measure your blood pressure and weight, so some health vitals. The challenge was the company wanted to get in touch with their users, and users could use the kiosk anonymously. What we did, we wanted to convert anonymous users into account holders. For that reason, when people enter their age and gender, we pull out of data how many others have actually improved their health vitals by having the account, by having the record of the previous measurements and how they were following up and improving their conditions. And that lead to conversion rate for the total number of participants, 20% increase. And then for the specific weight concerned group, it was 32% conversion rate increase. And this is the last example in the beginning. It's a little bit kind of funny on the one hand. So people arrive late to the meetings. And there was one particular company and their particular department. In the beginning, 65% of people were on time. And then in the end, we got up to the 100% within 5 meetings. So what did we do? We showed these bars on the right upper corner of everyone and their attendance or timely attendance to the meeting was given by the color of that day and that meeting. And for those who have empty space between the bar and the top mark of the red, they were late to the meetings. And obviously that worked, as you see in the percentage increase. And how did we implement? Very basic stuff. So somebody marks who is on time, who is not. And in the meeting room, you have the screen. and it instantly reflects. So nobody speaks to anyone in an old-fashioned way saying, you should do this, you should do that. It was just reflecting of what's happening. So the power of social dynamic is constantly influencing every individual, what they think and do on a daily basis. So typology of change that I mentioned as a third component. So usually in an old-fashioned way, you see the carrots and sticks, so the punishment and reward. I'm criticizing them all the time. With sticks, you can get the transaction, which is in one time. You get the fee, you pay it, and then you might not change anything if in your behavior if you don't want to. With carrots, you can kind of incentivize people for a certain period of time to stick with a certain behavior. So come to meetings on time or report about your customer visits on time. They're still limited because if they are driven by the carrots or stick, as you remove them, the behaviors usually come back to where they were. So instead of using these two carrots and sticks, social influence, which are exemplified on the right-hand side, that's the source which can lead to the fundamental and sustainable transformation. Why? Because we always have people around us, and we always predominantly have some people that are exemplifying and providing the good example of the behavior. And the last point about this slide, you see the corners. So the left upper corner, artificial, and the right upper corner, human. Why? Because carrots and sticks outside of our social evolution. They're kind of the incentivized mechanisms. But how we react to actual others and actual behaviors of others, that's very humane and very inbuilt into our fabric of biology. So that's why. Vectoral transformation. So these are three colors, and there's this green thing moving on the green vector. Why? Vector comes from the notion that if you have the stick, which is the transaction, that's a point. If you have a reward for a period of time, that's a line. And the trap with the transition, which is a line, is that there's an endpoint, and you put yourself into the psychological jail, so you release it after the time is over. So therefore, we remove the problem, and we remove the deadline, so it converts from the line into the arrow, which is endless. How does it work? If you decide to do a certain behavior, and you can come up with any behavior later when we'll have discussion. But for example, let's take a very basic that I did with myself. So I started to floss my teeth. So it was a big problem for me, but now I do it every single time. And the green vector means I do floss my teeth after every meal. If I don't do it, I step away from the green vector. And if I do it only after every second meal, then I'm on the yellow arrow. And if I do it after every fourth meal, for example, then I'm on the red vector. And this is how we kind of deviate from it. Why this is important? Because geometry explains, if we really decide to go direction where the green shows, whenever we step away, we make a different decision, we will never get there. This is how geometry works. Now let me show you how that's possible with this illustration right now. You see the green moves and then it moves away. So people have excuses. Oh, today I have a bad day, so I will just make it different. No. Geometry works like this. If you made a decision away, you are on a different vector, on a different arrow, moving in a different direction. So that's the transformation vector. And to conclude, this is the tool set. This is actually the framework with 8 tools that I provide to the companies for whichever behavioral challenge they have. Internal behavioral challenge with their employees, misbehaving in a certain way, not connecting to the other departments, not responding in time to the emails, not increasing their sales amounts, whichever that is. Or with the markets, if you want to educate your markets, your customers to change and switch over from your old product to your new product, or if you are an insurance company and you want a new insurance calculator to be adopted by the users, we use always the same process. And this is the methodology. It's also available on my website. The website is in the middle there, transforms.me. And there is also all the scientific literature, because all of these instruments are scientifically validated. Part of them are developed by me and my collaborators at Massachusetts Institute of Technology, MIT, and a few of those are coming from the deeper social sciences established a few decades ago. That's the short introduction from my side. I will stop sharing my screen and I'm open to continue this conversation and ready to answer all of your more particular questions about anything that I said right now, or about the Rubik's Cube?